We now have the single most clear, concise, and eloquent statement in favor of impeachment of President Trump by a member of the House of Representatives, and that member is a Republican. Michigan Congressman Justin Amash made history on Saturday afternoon when he became the first Republican member of Congress to advocate impeachment of President Trump in a series of flawlessly composed tweets. Congressman Amash wrote, "Here are my principal conclusions. 1, Attorney General Barr has deliberately misrepresented Mueller's report. 2, President Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct. 3, partisanship has eroded our system of checks and balances. 4, few members of Congress have read the report. Under our Constitution, the president shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. While high crimes and misdemeanors is not defined, the context implies conduct that violates the public trust." Contrary to Barr's portrayal, Mueller's report reveals that President Trump engaged in specific actions and a pattern of behavior that meet the threshold for impeachment. In fact, Mueller's report identifies multiple examples of conduct satisfying all the elements of obstruction of justice, and undoubtedly any person who is not the President of the United States would be indicted based on such evidence. Impeachment, which is a special form of indictment, does not even require probable cause that a crime, obstruction of justice, has been committed. It simply requires a finding that an official has engaged in careless, abusive, corrupt, or otherwise dishonorable conduct. While impeachment should be undertaken only in extraordinary circumstances, the risk we face in an environment of extreme partisanship is not that Congress will employ it as a remedy too often, but rather that Congress will employ it so rarely that it cannot deter misconduct. America's institutions depend on officials to uphold both the rules and spirit of our constitutional system, even when to do so is personally inconvenient or yields a politically unfavorable outcome. Our Constitution is brilliant and awesome. It deserves a government to match it. Those tweets were politically unfavorable enough for Congressman Amash that he suddenly has a Republican primary challenger now who announced his candidacy within 24 hours of those tweets. And President Trump, of course, attacked Congressman Amash on Twitter, calling the congressman a lightweight and a loser. In other words, the president did not in any way address any of the important points made by Congressman Amash. To analyze this David and Goliath battle in the Republican Party, we will be joined after this break by Republican strategist Rick Wilson and Jason Johnson. Here is Republican Congressman Larry Hogan announcing his support for impeaching Republican President Richard Nixon.
Now, I'm a Republican. Party loyalty and personal affection and precedents of the past must fall, I think, before the arbiter of men's action, the law itself. No man, not even the President of the United States, is above the law.
Those words were echoed this weekend when Republican Congressman Justin Amash became the first Republican member of Congress to support impeaching President Trump. Joining our discussion now, Rick Wilson, a Republican strategist and a contributor to the Daily Beast. He is the author of the book, Everything Trump Touches Dies. And Jason Johnson is the politics editor at TheRoot.com and a professor of politics and media at Morgan State University. Jason is also an MSNBC contributor. And Rick Wilson, here we have the Republican David and Goliath. And I thought we're all supposed to root for David in that story, right?
Well, you know, this is the new Republican mode, and it's always going to be that anyone who opposes Trump must be destroyed. That's why the caucus is going after him. That's why the NRCC is flirting with this new guy in the primary. You know, it reminds me that in 1973, when the impeachment articles were brought to the Judiciary Committee, Republicans voted with the majority on 3 of the charges: obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. And as Justin laid out in those tweets, and as we've seen from the evidence, those 3 cases could be made, but I promise you not one member except for him right now will vote for them, no matter whether or not they believe them to be true or not, or whether the evidence is overwhelming or not. They will protect Donald Trump till the last dog dies.
Jason Johnson, I can remember during the first year of the Trump presidency, sitting here, as many were, just waiting for that Republican to stand up against Trumpism in the United States Senate or in the House of Representatives, and then waiting through the second year for that to happen, waiting through the third year. Here we are into the third year of the Trump presidency, and finally, someone has stood up on the most important possible position you can take against this president, saying that, yes, he should be impeached.
Well, Lawrence, I always say this when it comes to votes in the House, votes in the Senate. You know, nobody wants to be the 60th vote, but everybody's happy with being 56, 57, and 58. We're basically seeing that in reverse in the House. I really doubt Justin Amash did this completely in a vacuum. I think one of the more compelling things about reading his tweets was when he talked about the fact that, number one, nobody in the House has even bothered to read their homework yet, and two, that he actually discussed this with his staff and that they had a back and forth as to whether or not he would make this statement. That suggests to me that there are other people involved in this. There are other people who are sort of putting their finger to the wind and saying, all right, can he survive this? Is this okay? I mean, is the person running against him a real challenge? I don't think so. And let's also make this very, very clear. Justin Amash is not like some sort of wishy-washy moderate. The guy was part of the Freedom Caucus. You know, he came in with the Tea Party. He's still sort of learning. He had the audacity to suggest in a recent interview, he said, yeah, I think actually a lot of Tea Party people just didn't like Obama for some reason. It wasn't about policies. So he is under no circumstances somebody that would be considered an ally of the left or Democrats. So it's compelling he made this decision. I don't think he'll be the last one.
Hey, Rick, what about that? I think if people were waiting for this kind of person to emerge, they would have predicted it would have come from one of the Republicans who's thought to think in more moderate directions, like possibly someone like Mitt Romney. Here it is coming from someone who's on the far right in most policy issues.
Well, you know, Lawrence, I sympathize with Justin here because I wrote my book about Trump as a critique from the right. Mm-hmm. Yes. And all these people were, you know, all the Trump guys are shocked by that. But there is a critique of him from the right. And I think Amash made it very eloquently in this case. And look, most of the people that would have been from the center, those suburban districts, because Donald Trump is political cancer, he destroyed all of their political careers. They either quit or lost in 2018. They left. We're 40 seats down because Donald Trump. And most of those people were those suburban moderates. They were the people in the suburbs of Virginia and Charlotte and other places. They're gone now. So the safe seat guys in the R+27 districts are still there, and they're all in. And so I think there's a little bit of shell shock right now from a lot of them that Amash dared to open the gate here.
And Jason, a Republican Party official this weekend accused him of parroting Democratic talking points. He wasn't. He was contradicting Democratic talking points. Right. Democratic talking points are, we're not ready for impeachment. We need the unredacted Mueller report. Here's somebody who says you do not need the unredacted Mueller report. It's all there in the publicly available version.
Right. I'm shocked, Lawrence, and disgusted that we're getting more bravery from a Republican and a conservative Republican than House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who was asked right after Amash made this speech, hey, do you think this is enough bipartisanship to move forward with impeachment? And she basically punted the ball again and said, no. The bipartisanship that we actually need is in the Senate. Look, leave that to Senator Kamala Harris. She's very good. Leave that to Cory Booker. They can handle this. The fact that you now have Republicans who are setting a light, who are setting a fire to Democrats' feet in the House to actually engage in impeachment when we have Don McGahn who's basically flipping his finger at the Constitution and saying, I'm not even going to come in and testify. This is an example of the leadership that is lacking in the Democratic Party that people were asking for in 2018. I hope Amash is the beginning of a change in attitude for the Democratic leadership, but it doesn't seem like that's happening right now.
Professor Jason Johnson gets tonight's last word. Rick Wilson, Jason Johnson, thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.